The fifth night they were in my house. I went downstairs for water at 11 p.m. My son Victor was in my wife's study. His voice was low, tight, the kind of voice people use when they're planning something wrong. I stopped, pressed record, and stood in that hallway listening to my eldest son plan to legally erase me. He said, "We need to move on the guardianship petition. Get Dr. Rains to certify the cognitive evaluation by Friday. Once we have legal guardianship, the power of attorney transfers automatically." A pause. Then, "He won't cooperate. We're not asking him to." Victor sat on the edge of my bed and took my hand. "Dad," he said softly, "it's going to be okay." I looked at him for exactly 3 seconds. Then I stood up. Not slowly, not weakly. I held up my clean scan results and said, "This is what Methodist Dallas found when they ran my actual tests. No Parkinson's, no cognitive decline, nothing. This room has been recorded for 14 minutes. Then I called the name he never expected, Miles. 2 state investigators stepped into the room. The handcuffs closed around Victor's wrists. He looked at me across the bedroom and said, "You set us up." I said, "I built a bridge. You walked across it." My name is Harold Pierce, and I'm 64 years old. I spent 38 years as a structural engineer for the city of Dallas. I built bridges this city still drives across, public libraries where children still study. My wife Eleanor and I built a life together quietly, carefully, the way people build things that are meant to last. When I retired at 62, our estate was worth $2.1 million. Not glamorous, but solid, the way I'd built everything else. Then Eleanor died 16 months ago. Fell down our staircase on a Wednesday evening. The paramedics said it was an accident. The medical examiner agreed, and I accepted it because when you love someone for 33 years and they're suddenly gone, you accept whatever explanation lets you keep breathing. But there was something she'd said to me 3 weeks before she died, standing in our kitchen making coffee. "Harold, I think Victor has been going through your files." I told her she was imagining things. I should have listened. 4 months after Eleanor's funeral, the dizzy spells started. My daughter Angela convinced me to see a specialist she'd recommended, Dr. Marcus Rains. He studied my scans for exactly 7 minutes, then turned around and said the word that changes every room it enters. Parkinson's. Early stage, treatable for now, progressing. He handed me a pamphlet the way you hand someone a parking ticket, clinical and detached. I drove home on autopilot and sat in my driveway for 22 minutes staring at Eleanor's photograph on the dashboard. I made 3 phone calls that night. Victor first, then Angela, then Nate. I told each of them exactly what Dr. Rains had said. Victor answered, "Dad, I'm coming tomorrow. Don't worry about anything." Angela, "I'll be there, Daddy. You're not doing this alone." Nate, "I'm coming home right away. I love you, Dad." 3 children. 3 identical responses, like a script they'd already rehearsed. I didn't say anything about that. I just set down my phone and thought about what Eleanor said in that kitchen 3 weeks before she died. They arrived the next morning. For 6 days they performed flawlessly. Victor made breakfast every morning, black coffee, 1 sugar, a detail he hadn't bothered remembering for the last decade. Angela cooked and organized and hired a cleaning service without being asked. Nate sat beside me on the sofa, asking what I wanted to watch. It was beautiful theater, but after 38 years of engineering, I know what a load-bearing wall looks like versus one that's painted to look like one. I watched their eyes, not their faces, their eyes. They never rested on me for more than a few seconds before drifting to the paintings, to the study door, to the cabinet where I kept financial documents. They were appraising, cataloging, planning, before I was even cold. On the 4th evening, Victor set down his fork and said in a voice carefully calibrated to sound concerned, "Dad, have you thought at all about the legal arrangements, just so we can help you plan?" Angela came in from the kitchen. "We don't want you stressed about paperwork." Nate added almost under his breath, "He has a safe somewhere, right?" I set down my spoon. "I haven't made any arrangements," I said, "for anyone." The warmth in that room drained away in approximately 4 seconds. 3 smiles frozen, 3 faces behind them going cold. The 5th night, I went downstairs for water at 11 p.m., and Victor's voice came from Eleanor's study, low, tight, the kind of voice people use when they're planning something wrong. I stopped, pressed the recording app I'd installed 3 weeks before they arrived, and stood in that hallway listening to my eldest son plan to legally erase me. "We need to move on the guardianship petition," Victor said. "Get Dr. Rains to certify the cognitive evaluation by Friday. Once we have legal guardianship, the power of attorney transfers automatically." A pause. Then, "He won't cooperate. We're not asking him to." I stood in that hallway and recorded every word. 2 days later, I watched 3 cars pull out of my driveway. No goodbye, no backward glance, just expensive engines fading down a street I'd lived on for 22 years. I sat on the floor of my living room that night, not on the sofa, on the floor, and held Eleanor's photograph against my chest. Not because I was falling apart, but because holding on to the one person who would have known exactly what to do was the only thing that made sense. She'd seen Victor coming for years. She'd tried to warn me, and I'd told her she was imagining things. Then I picked up my phone and called the one person I should have called first. Dr. James Kellerman, my doctor and closest friend for 30 years. I drove to his office at 9 p.m. without calling ahead and told him everything. The diagnosis, Victor's phone call, the 3 identical responses, the eyes scanning my estate. When I mentioned Dr. Rain's name, James's hand paused mid-pour for exactly 1 second, then continued. "Who recommended Dr. Rains?" he asked carefully. "Angela," I said. He looked at me for a long moment. "Harold, I need you to come in tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock. I want to run my own tests. Non-negotiable." The next morning, Dr. Sarah Voss, chief of neurology at Methodist Dallas Medical Center, looked at me across a table and said slowly and clearly, "Mr. Pierce, you do not have Parkinson's disease. Your neurological markers are completely normal. You have a severe B12 deficiency, completely treatable with injections and dietary changes. The scan Dr. Rains showed you was not yours." The room didn't spin. My hands didn't shake. I just sat there completely still and felt something cold and clear crystallize inside my chest. Not fear, not relief, clarity. I stood outside that hospital for 12 minutes with 2 choices. Call Victor and tell him the diagnosis was false, or say nothing. I thought about Dr. Rains, Angela's recommendation, Victor's phone call about guardianship, the 3 identical responses, and I thought about Eleanor standing in our kitchen 3 weeks before she died. I folded those clean scan results and placed them in my jacket close to my chest. Nobody needed to know I was healthy, not yet. I found Eleanor's journal 3 days later, hidden behind a winter coat in her closet. The last entry was dated 4 days before she died. Victor came to the house again without calling. I found him in Harold's study with the filing cabinet open. When I asked what he was looking at, he smiled and said he was just checking something. I'm frightened. I think he's been monitoring our accounts for months. I don't know how to tell Harold. He won't believe me. He never wants to see it. 2 pages later, I'm going to move the documents somewhere safe. The life insurance policy Harold doesn't know about. If anything happens to me, he'll find it. He'll know what to do. The final entry. I called Angela today. Told her I was worried about Victor accessing our accounts. She sounded like she already knew what I was going to say. I set the journal down on the kitchen table at 2 a.m. and understood something I could not unlearn. My wife didn't fall down those stairs by accident. Her children knew why she was afraid, and one of them had sat across from me at that dinner table last week and asked with a soft voice how I was feeling. I hired Miles Decker, an ex-DEA investigator who'd spent 20 years watching criminals before he started asking questions the agency didn't want asked. I sat across from him in a coffee shop and told him everything. When I finished, Miles put down his coffee and looked at me with the direct stillness of someone deciding whether to accept a job. "Are you sure?" he asked. "My wife didn't get to be sure," I said. "She just had to trust her instincts." Miles nodded once. "I'll start Monday." Over 5 weeks, Miles built the case. Victor had moved $340,000 through shell companies from our joint accounts over 2 years. Dr. Rains had 6 documented meetings with Victor, 3 wire transfers, 2 previous false diagnoses for other families. Angela had an email chain confirming she knew about the guardianship filing. And Eleanor's life insurance policy, the one Victor never knew existed, $2 million she had protected for me from beyond the grave. During those 5 weeks, Victor's daughter Chloe called me on a Thursday evening, 17 years old, the same age Eleanor always said was when people first start seeing the truth clearly. "Grandpa," her voice was tight. "I heard Dad talking on the phone. He said they needed to move before you could sign anything, that they needed to file Friday." I closed my eyes. Chloe, don't tell your father we spoke. Can you do that? Yes, she said. Then, Grandpa, are you okay? I looked at Eleanor's garden. I'm going to be, I said. I promise. I called Victor on a Monday morning and let my voice shake. I told him I'd been thinking, that maybe he was right, that I needed help managing things. Bring Dr. Rains, bring the estate documents. Come Friday, I'll sign whatever you need. There was a pause on the other end, the pause of a man who thinks he's finally won. I'll be there, Dad. Don't worry about anything. I hung up, looked at James across the staged bedroom. Miles was already in position. Sarah Chen from the State Attorney General's office was already in the house. The only thing left was to wait for Friday. Victor entered my bedroom the way men enter rooms when they believe they've already won, with the specific confidence of someone who thinks the deal is done. He sat on the edge of my bed and took my hand. Dad, we're here. It's going to be okay. I looked at him for exactly 3 seconds. Then I stood up. Not slowly, not weakly, the way a man stands when he's inspecting a structure he built himself. I held up my clean scan results. This is what Methodist Dallas found when they actually ran my tests, I said. No Parkinson's, no cognitive decline, no disease, nothing. Victor's face went from pink to white to gray in 3 seconds. Dad, this room has been recorded for 14 minutes, I said. Miles? 2 state investigators stepped out of the hallway shadows. Sarah Chen opened her credentials. State Attorney General's office. Victor was charged with elder financial abuse, unauthorized access to financial accounts, conspiracy, and fraud. Angela, accessory and obstruction. Nate, wire fraud. Dr. Rains, medical fraud and criminal negligence. As the handcuffs closed around Victor's wrists, he looked at me across the room and said, "You set us up." I said, "I built a bridge. You walked across it." At the trial, Chloe testified. 17 years old, back straight, voice steady, telling the truth about her own father. After the verdicts, she came to live with me. Victor received 16 years, Angela 9, Nate 5. Dr. Rains lost his medical license and received 7 years. The money recovered from Victor's accounts was distributed to 3 other families who had lost their savings to similar schemes. $2 million from Eleanor's life insurance went into an educational trust for Chloe's future, the Eleanor Pierce Memorial Fund, because she wanted to build things that lasted, and now she will. I spent 38 years building things meant to carry weight. Roads, bridges, buildings, structures that people depend on without ever thinking about what's underneath. I built my family the same way, assuming the foundation was solid because I poured it myself. I was wrong. Some foundations are hollow from the beginning, and you can't always see it until you test it. I don't have a clean lesson for you. I have Eleanor's journal, Chloe's testimony, and a fund in my wife's name that will outlive every one of us. That is enough. That will have to be enough. Take care of the people who see the truth, even when you don't want to hear it. Eleanor tried to tell me, don't make my mistake.